Welcome. On behalf of the Occidental College Folk and Historical Dance Troupe, I'd like to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Barber, who has made this entire evening possible. Please join me in a warm round of applause for her.
Welcome to the Oxy Folk and Historical Dance Troupe's dance theater reconstruction of the popular East Slavic tale, The Frog Princess. The tale is very old. It seems to have developed before the Slavs had dispersed much, which began to occur around 800 AD. It represents phases of the pagan Slavic wedding and dates at least back to the 12th century and probably earlier. Certain elements in the story are traceable all the way back to the Stone Age. We have spent 3 years of archaeological and ethnographic research on the tale and its choreography. And we would like to share some of this information so that you will understand more of what you see and of the riches of Slavic folk culture. 3 versions of the story of the Frog Princess, all short, were collected in the 19th century by the great folklorist Afanasyev. The basic tale goes as follows. A king orders his sons to shoot their arrows into the sky and to marry whoever brings them back. The youngest son's arrow is brought back by a frog, but he is betrothed to her anyway. The king demands that each of the 3 brides make him a shirt and bake him a loaf of bread so he can see who is the most accomplished. At night, the frog secretly turns into a beautiful girl who summons her spirit attendants to bring her the needed objects. In the morning, all are amazed at the beautiful embroidered shirt and the heavenly loaf of bread decorated with birds and animals. The other brides spy on the frog to discover her secrets. Finally, the king invites them all to a feast to see which bride can dance the best. The frog sends her prince on ahead and finally arrives as a splendid princess. During the feast, she drops the bones from her swan meat into one of her long sleeves and some drink into the other. The other brides watch and copy her. When asked to dance for the king, the frog princess first dances with her prince, then begins to wave her sleeves. As she waves the one with drink in it, the lakes, rivers, and forests appear. And when she waves the other, great flocks of swans and other birds appear. Everyone is entranced, but all disappears when she stops dancing. The other 2 brides get up to dance and wave their arms, but bones and water fly out and hit the guests. The king is not amused. Meanwhile, young Prince Ivan rushes home in search of the frog skin, which he finds and burns to keep the beautiful princess with him in her human form. When she arrives and learns what he has done, she weeps. If he had waited 3 more days, she would have been free of the spell that made her a frog. Now she must return whence she came. She disappears. Ivan sets out to find her, asking directions of one witch and another. He learns that the princess is at the house of the 3rd and oldest witch, the dreaded Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga will be spinning golden thread onto a spindle that she will lock up and hide in a box when he arrives. To regain the maid, he must find the key to the box, take the spindle, throw the top behind him and the base in front of him. He reaches the ancient witch's hut and succeeds in doing all this. As the broken spindle hits the floor, the princess appears before him in its stead, dressed in a golden dress. They are married and live long and happily. So that is the story as it has come down to us. But to understand its many strange details, one needs to know something about pagan Slavic deities and wedding traditions. Perun, the powerful thunder god, is similar to Zeus, Jupiter, and Thor. Perun's thunderbolt is likened to an arrow, and it was thought to impregnate moist Mother Earth to bring forth new life. The image of the thunder arrow piercing Mother Earth is found in traditional Russian wedding songs, sung as the bridegroom and his family went to the girl's house to negotiate for the wedding. Christianity did no more than lightly disguise the old religion. The bridegroom sat under the icon of the Savior, which had replaced the image of Perun. The bride sat under the icon of the Mother of God. moist Mother Earth is what had been in that place before. The icons themselves were adorned with sacred cloths, which were typically embroidered in red with motifs traceable back thousands of years. One favorite figure, the protectress, Virginia, with her arms raised high, surrounded by birds. You will see this motif in our dancing. Especially important for our tale are the vili, or rusalki. These were thought to be the souls of girls who died before having children. Because they had not fulfilled their life cycle, they came back to their old haunts after death in the guise of birds, especially white ones, like swans and geese. If they died of drowning, they came back as mermaids. And when they combed their long, wet hair, this was thought to make the rain fall on the crops. White birches were sacred to the vili also. If you prayed to the vili, they might bestow their unused fertility on you. But if you angered them, especially if you were male and surprised them as they danced in the woods at night, they would hurl rocks and branches at you and maybe even dance you to death. They also might tickle you to death. Festivals in their honor, the so-called Rusalii, were held 3 times a year. At midwinter, at the beginning of spring, and at midsummer. At midwinter, young women tried to learn their future from the spirits, what would befall them with respect to marriage, death, childbirth, and so forth. The method of divination that we show in our prologue is still used today. That is, pouring molten wax into cold water and looking at the shapes it makes. The midsummer Rusalii were celebrated the growing crops with energetic dancing. It was believed that the higher people jumped, the higher the crops would grow. Woo! Fish maidens and herd maidens decorated the windows, gates, and roofs of farms and houses in silent appeal for the vili's help. In Ukraine, the vili are said to be very beautiful, but the farther north you go, the uglier and more mean-tempered they get, which is a reflection undoubtedly of how much harder it is to raise crops the further north you go. In English, we have the expression, "It gave me the willies." And this comes from these same creatures and from a northern version of them. In the tale of the Frog Princess, the willies, or vili, are fairly benign, one of several bits of evidence that the story is of southern origin. Evidence for worship of the virgin bird and fish maidens begins in the Stone Age, well before 3000 BC, and continues into this century. We have Neolithic figurines of girls with bird faces. Athena, the great virgin goddess of the Greeks, appeared and disappeared as a bird, especially as an owl. Among her duties was maintaining the fertility of Athenian women and crops, just as the vili do. The virgin goddess, it seems, could appear as any creature that laid eggs, birds, fish, frogs, or snakes. The famous Minoan figures of young women hold up snakes in exactly the same way as the women embroidered on the Slavic goddess claws hold up their birds or grain. As an egg-laying creature, the frog is a fertility symbol too, and the Frog Princess represents the cosmic bride in our story. She slaps the ground with her foot to wake up Mother Earth to new life, a frequent dance motif in surviving Rusalii dances. Eggs are a wonderfully compact symbol of incipient life. At Easter, which is the Christianized age-old celebration of renewed life in the spring, people still paint Easter eggs all over Europe, but especially in Ukraine. These eggs are painted in bright colors, especially red, and used in rituals to symbolize the return of life. The favorite color, as I said, is red. And this represents life-giving blood. This is a color symbolism that is traceable in East Europe for at least 10,000 years. It is no accident that Slavic embroidery is predominantly red. Its life-helping forces were placed especially at the openings of the clothing to keep out the demons thought to cause sickness and death. If you didn't watch out, they'd get in and make you sick. As the color of blood, red is also the color of warriors. So men generally wore red sashes or even red shirts to show their strength. Warriors formed the second caste in Indo-European societies. Their color was red. So we have dressed our oldest prince, who runs his father's military campaigns, in red. Black was the color of the rich black earth, and this was the color in Indo-European society of the third caste, which was the farmers and artisans. Now, black dye is difficult to make, so blue was often substituted for it. So we have dressed our second prince in blue. White represented purity and also royalty. So, of course, we've given white to our youngest prince, the one who wins the divine princes. Now, pagan Slavic wedding customs differed considerably from Christian ones. When a match was proposed, the young pair marked their engagement with special bracelets, engraved with important fertility designs. We'll look at the designs shortly. After the engagement, the couple began living together. In fact, the Russian word for betrothal is braceleting. At this time, their families settled the financial arrangements and tested the young people to see if they were adequate before having the wedding itself. The first half of our story, you may have recognized, indicates the testing of the bride. Test number 1, could she make the clothing for the family? Up into this century, the bride had to make shirts for all the male relatives of the groom. Her friends helped her finish the task shortly before the wedding. And the night before the wedding, they lament with her, traditionally, the lost freedom of her girlhood. And they braid her long hair for the last time. Once she is truly married, she has to keep her hair covered, because the woman's hair is thought to represent fertility. Only vili and witches wore their hair loose, and only maidens could wear it in a visible braid. Test number 2. Could the girl make the food for the family? Bread was by all means the central food of this area of the world. It was considered so sacred that it was ritually presented to guests when they entered the house. The bride was required to present a loaf of bread to gain entrance to the groom's house. The bride's women relatives helped her bake a special wedding loaf and decorate it with birds, animals, and birch twigs. Remember, birds and white birch are sacred to the viewing. As they baked, the women sang of the strong young pine tree found out in the forest, a symbol of the young man. Test number 3 was to learn whether the girl was strong enough to do all the farm work. Slavic women typically did most of the hard labor, while the men tended the large animals. Ritual bride testing dances survived in South Slavic areas up into this century. Our choreography is based upon these. The prospective mother-in-law pounds out the rhythm, while the sons test the girl's strength and endurance in fast turns and high jumps. After the bride testing, the frog princess dances again. She waves the sleeve into which she had put drink, and the lakes and rivers appear. These are symbols of the spirit world. She waves the sleeve containing swan bones, and great flocks of white swans and geese appear. And you know by now that these are the symbols of the vili and their fertility. And now back to the ancient silver wedding bracelets, for this sleeve dance is depicted on several of them. They're quite small, of course, and we've transferred the designs to the tablecloths so that you can see them. The sleeves are much longer than the girl's arms. These sleeves were normally held up by the very bracelets on which these images appear. This strange dress with its ultra-long sleeves was worn into the 20th century in parts of Russia and Ukraine. And we can trace it back to at least 700 BC in this area. Christian priests complained vehemently about women dancing at the Midsummer Rusali festival, flapping their long, loosened sleeves about like white birds. Men dance too, with whirling and stamping, and do so still in Bulgaria in honor of the Rusali each spring, whence some of our foot-slapping dance steps come. The Midsummer Rusali were celebrated out in the woods, under arches formed by bending together the tops of young birch trees. People drank hops-flavored beer out of conical cups. The hops vine and its fruit also symbolized fertility. I have recently learned that a hops vine in the spring may grow as much as 6 inches in one day. When the bride was welcomed to the groom's house, she was strewn with hops, coins, and other symbolic objects to start the fertility. Water symbols in the form of interlaced lines also abound on the bracelets, since water was viewed as the source of life and the domain of the spirits. Circles with X's represented the sun. Our story is egalitarian. After the bride has been tested, the groom must be tested. Is he strong and clever enough to win her back? He is sent from one witch to the next, and at last to the forest house of the dreaded Baba Yaga. According to tradition, her fence was decorated with human skulls, whose eyes light up when a human approaches. Her hut, by tradition, stands on chicken legs and turns to face somebody who knows the proper call to let him in. Inside, Baba Yaga sits on the stove, spinning golden thread. What's this all about? Well, actually there were forest huts that stood on stilts, the bathhouses. They were often called boshena, or temple. And in these places, apparently secret, non-Christian rituals were carried out all the way up into this century. In Ukraine, these secret rituals included spinning flax, best done, as it happens, in a damp place like the sauna-like bathhouse. In a traditional Slavic wedding, the groom received a ritual bath. If water from the bride's bath were used on him, it was thought he would be faithful to her forever. We know that in ancient times, marijuana smoke was part of ritual bathing, possibly enough to turn an innocent bathhouse, its attendants, and stray spiders into a scary hallucination. We've used these elements to create our scene. Superstition had it that at midnight on Midsummer's Eve, the fern blossomed with a red flower. This flower would protect the finder from demons and enable him to find hidden treasure. Our hero at last finds the spindle of golden thread, which magically turns into his princess in a golden dress, the color in which the bride was traditionally presented to the family the morning after. Morning dawns, and the prince and princess consecrate their wedding in the age-old Slavic way by carrying lighted candles around a pine tree in the forest, as the peasants celebrate the end of the summer Rusali festival under the birches. In recent times in Soviet Russia, when people didn't want to have Christian weddings but wanted to mark the festival, the rite of passage in some way, many people went back to this same ritual of carrying the candles around a fir tree in the forest. The music for the magical scenes in our story has been chosen from Russian classical composers, heavily influenced by Russian folk music: Mussorgsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, Stravinsky, and Rachmaninoff. The other scenes were composed from traditional Russian folk music, played mostly on balalaika and bayan, which is a small accordion with buttons at both ends, while the dances were arranged from the most archaic types of line dances, since couple dancing came in from the West only a couple of centuries ago. And now we present the Frog Princess.
дай девица, откадывай красная, кое руки белица, змеиная крылица. Guess, oh guess, where is the prize? Here a ring or dragon's wing. Пощарада гадала, и ярада гадывала, через поле идущий, росу косу плетущий, шелком приплетающий, златом прибывающий. I would very gladly guess, braiding ribbons in my dress. Push my голубки, мой голубки, вы скажите мне, отдайте мое золото, отдайте, cousins, give me back my gold. Слава на небе, солнцу высокому, слава еще эту мою песню небу пою, слава, glory to high heaven and the